On this episode of Tell Us a Story.
We need that dynamic part in our life where there's a harmony, because most things don't give us that insight. We think we know, but often we don't.
I guess important to know that we have a life of choice.
It was really unstable. My mom was suicidal the first time I remember. I was 4. My dad was alcoholic abuser. So I was always curious about people, but I didn't connect with those emotional aspects of myself. So this really opened me up, and I found a meditation and healing system that I've been teaching for 20 years. And the first thing we have to do is really take that breath.
Welcome to Tell Us a Story, the podcast by Belmont City Press, where entrepreneurs and sales professionals share their journeys, insights, and strategies for success. In each episode, our guests reveal how they've overcome challenges, established their brands, and leveraged their stories to promote their businesses so you can too. I'm Red Hilton, your host for this episode. Today I'm joined by Robyn McTague, who is the owner of A Life of Choice. So, Robyn, tell us a story.
Certainly. Thanks for having me today. So I call myself an engagement catalyst because really I help entrepreneurs and teams, if you have them, understand why they do what they do and what energizes them and motivates them so they can really get in alignment with what's important to them, because that builds resiliency and we learn relationship strategies for both our personal and professional success. We can't have one without the other. Right? We need that dynamic part in our life where there's a harmony. And, I don't believe in balance, because balance is like the teeter-totter, right? We're constantly struggling. But if we have harmony, it's like I can bring myself, my full self, to everything I do. And then I don't feel disjointed. I don't feel disconnected. I know what drives my behavior. And so I use some really unique tools to do that, including the motivational map, the Enneagram, the DNA of behavior. So I get the really full brain assessment and really understand how we feel about things, because most things don't give us that insight. We think we know, but often we don't. And I actually do a study with people. So I ask them to predict what their top 3 motivators are, and most people don't get it right. Or they might, but not in the order. And it is important because the top one is the most important. And those top 3 give us 60 to 70% of our behaviors. So we really need to understand more that invisible part of us and bring it forward so we can actually use it to our benefit.
And I guess important to know that we have a life of choice.
Exactly, right? Because growing up for myself, it was...
Yeah, share with us how you came to where you are and how a life of choice came to be, and what your experience has been that brought it forward.
Because when I grew up, I didn't feel I had any choice. And we don't really as kids, right? We're in a family. We have to deal with what's there. So mainly it's survival, and we find these different ways to deal with it. So we come into the world with a temperament, but then our environment helps to shape that. And for me, I didn't feel safe. It was really unstable. My mom was suicidal the first time I remember. I was 4. My dad was alcoholic abuser. So I really shut myself down, and I was a super shy kid. And then my mom and I lived with other families. So I felt like the outsider. We moved around a lot. And yeah, it was just really difficult. And then my brother and I were separated. He came back and was really challenged, really angry, and didn't know how to address it. So he was abusive to us. And finally, when my dad died, even though my mom and dad didn't live together, it kind of set her over the top again, and she decided to move. And I moved in with another family. So I had a foster family, which was really a saving grace for me, because I really felt accepted there. And I could actually settle. I had my own room for a change. And I really started to understand myself more and feel more just based, like I have a home base now. And so, in my family, no one had even finished high school. And then I went on to university, And so I really used my intellect, which was really important to me and made me feel safe. And then I went on, found a job that I felt really safe in. And then 24 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
So we know, if you are familiar with Louise Hay, the breast is around nurturing, and that's something I didn't receive growing up. And so this was a real lesson for me in, what do I want in my life? How has my life been so far? So I had all the intellectual training, but what about the emotional aspects that I'd shut down? So it was a real opening for myself to really dive deep into that part of me, even though I'd always kind of skirted around, why are some people aware and other people aren't? Like, I had those thoughts even as a teenager. So I was always curious about people, but I didn't connect with those emotional aspects of myself. So this really opened me up. And I found a meditation and healing system that I've been teaching for 20 years. And that really helped. And then that really helped to build my confidence. And so after 34 years there, I felt I'd had enough years. I could leave early with a pension and again have that kind of safety component where I could go out on my own. And then I'd already trained psychology, counseling, conflict resolution, all these different things, and then added the map and the Enneagram and these other tools. And just, it really helped me to both the personal growth, but also the professional growth and that ability to help others and bring my full self and help others bring their full self.
If you could just take a moment and define some of the tools that you use. You've used some words, and I want to make sure everybody has an idea or a picture in their head exactly what it is they are and how they benefit people and or how you use them.
Sure. The first one we usually do is the motivational map. And there's 9 motivators. And our top 3, as I indicated, are the main pieces, the main driving behavior. And the bottom one is often very interesting. And that's what I found for myself. There was a lot of insight because our bottom one, we don't always see as important. So we can dismiss people in our life because of that without awareness. So, for example, you're got this great energy and I might be low in the star. So I see you as, oh, she's too much. So I kind of dismiss you because I see you in a certain way. But it's important, especially as entrepreneurs, if we don't have some of that, we don't have to have the extremes, right? Like the Hollywood stars, or none at all. But if we can use some of that to our advantage and say, well, if I'm not known, if people don't know who I am, how can I support them?
Mm.
So reframing that, and for me, it was the friend. When I worked full time, I was working full time, I was teaching on the side, lunch was my fitness. So I saw people who wanted more of my time that I couldn't give as needy. Not understanding, they just connected by relationship. And becoming an entrepreneur, it's all about relationships. So it was a total new way of looking at it. And so it was so important for me to see that.
Would it be fair to say that perspective plays a large part in observing who you are and the direction your life should be going in?
Absolutely. And in order to do that, and that's why I love the Enneagram, because it shows us, again, 9 personality styles and kind of that reality strategy that we use. And the more we can look at all 9 and use different aspects, but we really need to start with that core one that kind of keeps us in that personality box. And the Enneagram is a path for growth and transformation, so we can see it for what it is. And the first thing we have to do is really take that breath. What is that automatic reaction that I'm always responding by? And is that really true? And how can I work with myself to see it in a different light?
Mm.
Myself as a 6, we have a lot of fear. And, I grew up with that. And so that was my way of coping, was to kind of sit back and not engage, read my books, do the things that I could do on my own because I didn't want to engage. And then, as I grew, it's like, well, I can use those different aspects and see it in a different light. It might still come up, but I don't have to buy into it, right? I can take that breath and see it for what it is and kind of befriend it. And the more that we dismiss things, the more it becomes shadow, where it's running the show in the background in the unconscious, but we don't realize it, right? So this is where the self-sabotage comes in, because we're not aware of these aspects of ourselves that we've dismissed. One I like to use as an example is jealousy. Who wants to feel jealousy, right? And whether it's in a relationship or in business, right? We see other people maybe achieving something that we want. And when we actually work with that part of us and bring it into the dialogue, we can see it for what it is. So it might just mean, oh, I desire that. And then it doesn't have that same grip on us because it's not being heard. Because really, we all want to be seen and heard. And that's even within ourselves.
What are some of the other tools? You talked about the mapping. What are some other tools that you use to sort of get to the challenges people are facing?
The meditation is really, it's a different type of meditation. It's active. So rather than, I started with the yogic meditation where you look at a candle, empty your mind. And then I did transcendental meditation. It was popular. The Beatles were doing it, but I never stuck with them. And this system, we actually go in and create systems. So it's much more geared to our Western mind, where we can go in and, use our dream interpretation, using our energy shields, using ways to feel safe and to understand what's mine and what's yours. So often we are empathetic, right? We have all this discussion around empaths. Well, I think we all are to some degree. And it's more about, can I understand what's my emotion and someone else's? And that really saved me getting back into the workplace because, I'd spent all this time going really deep. I felt really vulnerable and stressed out people. It's like, oh, I can't be around them. And then I found this course, and the first week I felt better. So if people are willing to go deeper, it's not for everyone, but it is one of those things that gives you a lot of benefit. And that was probably the main one. The other one is the conflict resolution. No matter what I do, it always comes up. And so conflict resolution and boundary setting are, I would say, two biggest things that people need to learn that we didn't learn in our families. And there's so many different examples of not knowing how to word things. And that's one of the things I love about the motivational map and the Enneagram. It really helps us to give that kind of neutral language. And so the skills that we learn through conflict resolution is really being curious. And so if I can just be open and again, do that breath, I feel reactive to you. You've said something. It could be you remind me of someone else. Maybe it's an old pattern from my childhood, which is most of the case. And so I can't even hear what you have to say. So
I'm just going to say, when you talk about conflict resolution and boundaries, how do we recognize that we're struggling with that?
With boundaries, often what happens, we say yes a lot when we want to say no. And then what happens, we can self-sabotage it, right? Because I've said yes, and then I get overwhelmed because I've overcommitted and I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to create some kind of scenario where it's not going to happen. And we have people in our life like that, right? They commit to something and then last minute they say, oh no, I can't go because of this or that. There's always some excuse. But if we actually own it, and, I went through that becoming an entrepreneur. Everyone wants you to join their Facebook group and join this and join that. And I found myself really really wanting to help people, but then really having to set that boundary to say, what is my capacity? So now when people ask me, often I'll say, I'd love to support you. There may be another way. Can I like your Instagram page? And I don't have the capacity to join your Facebook group. It feels disingenuous to me to join and not participate. Like that doesn't do anything for me and for you and your group. So that's something I cannot support you in, but what's another way I can support you in?
Do you think people who don't set boundaries or don't respect their own boundaries then end up in conflict?
Absolutely, because resentment builds, right? And so, we're really bad at dealing with two big emotions, grief and anger in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And so that anger comes out and seeps out in different ways. And often it's resentment. We see this in relationships. I want you to do something for me, but I can't ask you directly. And so we have this back and forth, but things aren't being said. Instead of saying, this might be a difficult conversation for us to have. Are you willing to have it? Like I'm really feeling like there's expectations or whatever it is for you, right? You're asking me to do these things, or I'm feeling like you want me to do these things. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's how I'm perceiving it. So can we talk about that and maybe negotiate how we use our time? Maybe I am feeling more independent. I want to do more things on my own, and you want to have more time together. We talk about love languages and all these different things, but really, can we have that discussion about what's important to us? And the map can really help with that as well, because we have internal conflicts and then conflict with others. And often we talk about personality conflicts when it's a motivational conflict, because I want to go off and do this and create things. And I just want to have our relationship really solidified and spend time together.
What is your number one advice for someone either that is trying to avoid conflict or when they find themselves there to direct themselves out of that successfully?
The first thing I would say is not to take it personally. And that's usually what happens. And that's why we have so much emotion around it. Can we kind of sit back and say, it's not really about me, it's about them. Yes, we have a relationship, we have something together, but what is really important to me? And the more we know ourselves and what's important to us, then the more we can hold that and say, yeah, I'm really finding this challenging, and this is what's important to me, what's important to you about it. So can I actually take that moment? And sometimes it's taking some time on our own. So often we won't ask for what we need. So for some people, and we see this with the Enneagram styles, I don't know what I'm feeling in the moment. And so, or I don't know what decision I want to make yet. I need some time on my own to look at that and kind of process it. So from the other side, if they're not willing to do that, that's where we can get angry and resentful. And so for us that are asking the question, can we give that person the grace and say, okay, yeah, do you want to meet at another time? Let's book another slot to have this discussion, and just really allow those differences. And so have that time to look at the differences, give the space if they need it, and allow an ongoing dialogue. So often we want to be one and done, right? We're so in our society, it's going from A to B, but we don't think about the process to get there. But if we can actually slow down and say, what's important about this? Let's take it step by step and see what comes out of it. How can we both bring those pieces together? And so it's really taking that time and allowing it.
What is a common misconception that you find yourself educating people on with regards to what you do?
I'd say one of the biggest ones is people feel it's going to be too much. Like I had a male, and males traditionally in our society aren't kind of emotionally trained to be more in touch with their feelings. And he had had a bad experience with some personal development in the past. And because he knew me and trusted me, we worked together, and he was pleasantly surprised. And he said, that was such an easy process. You didn't push me beyond what I was ready to do. And we took it step by step. I created kind of the safety container. So I think that's what happens for people. It's like the coach or the person helping them wants to just dive in and get to that place, but we need to allow the space for the person to go at their own pace and not take it personally again, and also not have an agenda. Like, how present can we be with what's going on? And again, open that dialogue and bring both people in. So it's not this, I'm just firing questions at you. I think people think that about coaching, where, we're just going to set a goal and I'm going to bother you every week about where you are with that goal. Whereas when we come more from an interpersonal part, we can look at, okay, what's coming up in your reactions this week? How are you responding to things? What's going on with you? What do you notice is causing you tension? All these different things that gets more to the deeper part of us, because this is the only place where we're going to change. And in society, we talk about spiritual bypass, where, again, that A to B, I'm just going to be happy. And, I've dealt with my problems, but we really have to look at the past and not do it in a way that's going to push us beyond our capacity, but build that capacity. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is learning to build that capacity and the ability to be present with what's here and go step by step that way.
A lot of what you've done through your teachings and education has been through writing and, sharing with people in that manner. Can you talk us through and walk us through where you've written, what you've written?
Sure. So I've been in 6 compilation books so far. And one of the most recent one was Confident Secrets. And 2 that I have chapters to give away on the website is Your Shift Matters. And my chapter is my story with breast cancer, and it's called From Sofa to Soaring. And then
That's adorable, From Sofa to Soaring. I love that.
And
we can all relate to at least one of those, I'm sure.
yes, I'm sure. The one thing every mom needs to know in that one is 5 steps for partner conflict resolution.
Okay.
Are you the missing piece? While we were silent, which is about sexual abuse, and live your passion.
So 2 of those you have available on your website that people could go and download and read?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have an author page if they wanted to? You're part of 6 anthologies, 2 of which they can have access to today. Where are the other anthologies located?
They'll be on Amazon.
Okay. And your website, just so we have it here, and we will put it in the show notes, is alifeofchoice.ca.
Right. I'm in Canada, so it's instead of .com.
Fabulous. Also, talk to me about meditation. I know that is a huge part of what you do, and personally and professionally. Walk us through everything you need us to know. And then I think you have an offer as well, correct?
Yes, I do. So the 4-week course, I do have an introductory session, and different events are posted on the website. And so it's coming in and learning about the style of meditation. So it's very much both a healing system and a meditational system. So you access those deeper parts of yourself so you can find the answers within. You get the energy shielding, you learn to bring in more energy from the universe, a grounding system, so we have a more stable base in our life and feel safer to explore those deeper parts of ourself. And yeah, many different tools. And in the introductory session, I'll actually walk you through a meditation and offer the healing that you would learn in the class. So it's healing both for yourself, and you can work on your loved ones as well.
Okay.
And the free meditation is to do with relationships. It's a 15-minute meditation, and it goes step by step. So you start the meditation and you get to a certain point, and then I kind of give you a stopping point or continuing. So again, building in the safety, saying, do you feel like you've done enough for today and you want to come back later, or do you want to continue? So really allowing you to process at your own speed.
Now, the access to the 15-minute meditation, you have a URL for that, and we're going to put that in the show notes as well.
Yes, it's a bit long, so that's probably the best bet.
No worries. We'll make sure everybody has it and can get to it. Okay. So, Robyn, what I like to ask guests often is, what is your Monty? So Monty is our mascot here at Belmont City Press. And he's sort of a beacon of all things inspirational, or sort of a mantra that we use in our life. So is there one that you have that you could share with our listeners that they could take away from our chat today?
The one I use all the time is be curious. All behavior makes sense. Always to that person. So how can I step out of the reactivity to be curious and ask questions and figure out where they're coming from?
Can you give an example?
So, for example, maybe someone says to you, "Oh, I don't like what you do." And it's like, "Oh, that's interesting." So, I take it personally because that's my work. And I take a breath and it's like, "Okay, tell me about that. What is it that you don't like about it?" Maybe there's something I could tell you more about, or, we can have a dialogue about it and see if they're open to it. And, that's where the discernment comes in. Hopefully they're open to having the discussion. But if not, then you get to make a choice too, right? It's like, okay, that's great. They're still a great person. I'm not going to take it personally, but maybe we don't have the connection. So if it's at a networking event, or, someone says something to you about your work, or just personally, I don't like what you're wearing, or whatever it is, right? We get that, where people are reacting to us because we represent something else to them.
I think sometimes people conflate having a conversation in a conflict, a confrontation, and not understanding that you don't have to have both all the time at the same time. You can have conversations without a confrontation.
Absolutely.
I think that's a challenge that a lot of people may have.
Yeah, and we see it especially in relationships, right? It's like we're making assumptions about what the other person is thinking or feeling instead of asking. And so we have these scenarios going on in our head, going around in circles, and we're creating the dialogue, and they're not even part of it, right? We expect them to play this role in our life that they don't know the script to.
I do see how that can happen a lot in relationships, where people are reacting to things that may or may not be existing. So, all right, let's do the rapid fire section of our little chat here today, where I'm going to give you two choices and you just answer with whichever one you feel matches best and aligns with what you like and enjoy. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Are you a morning person or evening person?
Morning.
Excellent. Fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. Excellent. Shopping online or in a store?
In a store.
People say that. Let's see. Spicy or mild? You have to think about
towards the mild.
What?
More towards the mild. I like a little spice, but not too much.
I am mild all day long. A laptop or a desktop?
Desktop.
Desktop. Me too. I don't even own a laptop. I don't even, it's so funny, I don't even tell people now that I have. Okay. But I don't even tell people I don't own a laptop. I literally work on a desktop. And they're like, "Oh, bring your laptop over." I'm like, "Oh yeah, my imaginary laptop. I'm going to show up with like some little pink thing from a kid." Excuse me. What about, let's see. Classic or modern?
That's a tough one. Classic, I'll have to go with.
I can see that. Reading or writing?
I love writing.
You love writing?
Yeah.
Really? I think I like reading more, but you can become horribly disappointed if it's not something enjoyable. Writing, you have more control because you're writing, you're creating it yourself. So,
Yeah, the reading I love too, but it's like I always have so many on the go. It's like to just settle on one. It's like, the favorite child is like, oh.
all right. So, we have a guest to guest question. The guest before you left behind a question for you to answer. So, are you ready for your guest to guest question now?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. What is the biggest aha moment you have had in your life?
Hmm. When I really understood that choice, and one of the books that I love that I still recommend to people is the Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? He's in a concentration camp.
Mm.
He created logos therapy and psychology out of that. But he said, they couldn't break my mind. They might break my body, but they couldn't break my mind because I could, connect with the beautiful scenery that I used to live in, the people that I loved. So they couldn't do anything to me about that.
Mm.
So he kept that with him and he kept his spirit alive. So I think that place where I did reconnect to my spirit through the cancer and that kind of added piece of really understanding it on a personal level too.
Mm. So one more time for us, your website is alifeofchoice.ca.
Correct.
And where on social media can you be found?
I'm on Facebook, just under my name. I'm on LinkedIn, and those are the main two spots.
So Facebook and LinkedIn, and we'll put some connections and links for that in the show notes as well. What is your final thought for our listeners?
Really take the time with yourself, whether you do meditation or just to walk in nature, something to reconnect with yourself every day, because we get so focused on the external and, we get into that doing, and we need that being part of us as well, because that's really where it starts. If you think about yin and yang, yang comes from yin. So we have to have the internal kind of personal part of us and that connection before we express. So the more that we can tap into ourselves and what's important to us in however way you want to do that.
Excellent. Well, Robyn, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. It's extremely valuable, and I hope I honored that here today.
Thank you so much.
To our listeners, if you have a story to share, visit tellasastorypodcast.com. If you're an aspiring author, a seasoned business owner, or looking to elevate your personal brand, visit belmontcitypress.com for expert advice on writing your own success story. Trust the next chapter, because you are the author. Now, tell us a story.